Zombies, a monster that has been around in many forms of entertainment since the 1930s, popularized in the late 60s with George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. It's a genre that in television and films has fluctuated in popularity here in the West, hitting its lulls in the 80s and 90s only to reach all new heights in the early 2000s, with renewed interest in the genre from its popularity in video games. Games like Resident Evil and House of the Dead had shown their success globally in the 90s to not only those in Hollywood, but others in the gaming industry. The explosion of zombies in the 2000s was enormous, and it was led by video games, inspiring movies to be made like 28 Days Later and Shaun of the Dead. And from box office hits like those, more and more zombie games would release, and the trend in gaming hasn't really gone away. So what makes the Left 4 Dead series so special? Well, that's what we're here to find out today. In this video, I'll be going over both Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, seeing if they're worth playing today, why they are remembered so fondly, and the potential Left 4 Dead 3. The time codes will be in the description below for your convenience, but enough dawdling and let's jump into this retrospective on the Left 4 Dead series. Left 4 Dead began development in 2005 as Turtle Rock Studios aimed to create a horror film-inspired game in the hopes of merging single-player games and their character narratives with multiplayer games and their social nature and high replayability. The team craved a cooperative multiplayer experience after many raging nights playing Counter-Strike, and if no one else was going to create it, they would.
We had played so much Counter-Strike, right? It would get heated, because we're all fighting each other, right? And, everyone was getting pissed at each other. Like, you headshotted me with the Desert Eagle, like, for the 100th time. I'm gonna kill you. I remember at one point, like, Chris and I were just sitting there talking, like, why can't we play a game where we can all be friends and like each other after the game?
Left 4 Dead was first revealed in 2006, and in early 2008, Valve acquired the studio because of their interest in the title and long-standing relationship between the companies, and the game released in November 2008. Left 4 Dead underwent many phases of development as the studio would remove and tweak the game based on playtesters' feedback. Two big removals from the original concept were long introductions between the campaigns and one big city design with multiple routes. Ultimately, the playtesters reported the long introductions impacted the game's replayability, and the big city design and multiple paths confused the testers in the beginning. Whilst the big city design wasn't completely removed and instead split into the No Mercy and Dead Air campaigns, the introductions to each campaign wouldn't remain and would end up hampering the story component of the game. Valve's biggest contribution to the release was financing a marketing campaign worth $10 million in both the US and Europe, and had the game advertising in all forms of media. Valve even hosted a photo contest called Dude, Where's My Thumb, offering the winners a copy of the game for the best picture involving zombies or Left 4 Dead advertisement. Left 4 Dead was a success, critically and commercially, selling over 600,000 units in less than a month on the 360 alone, and many critical outlets scoring the game in the high 8s and 9s, and for many was the best multiplayer game of 2008, even Hideo Kojima saying he was addicted to the game. Turtle Rock and Valve had created a hit. Left 4 Dead, despite Turtle Rock's initial hopes of merging single-player and multiplayer experiences, does not have much of a story. We are introduced to this universe 2 weeks after the initial outbreak. We get a feel for our main cast of characters Bill, Lewis, Zoe and Francis, and their hopes of escaping the Horde, and through this short introduction are also shown just how varied and terrifying the infected can be. The game is split up into different campaigns that, whilst following on from one another in terms of why they are there after escaping the previous campaign, are otherwise very separate, as if they are a series of films and hence the movie posters. Yet despite the lack of narrative, the characters manage to stand out. We get to know their personalities and roles amongst the group throughout the various situations we encounter just from pure in-game dialogue.
End of the line, sweeties. Grab some gear. Let's go.
Great. Maybe we can meet some new people and leave them behind.
Zoe, I'm not leaving any of you behind.
The infection has brought this unlikely gang together with a singular goal of survival. That's the goal. That's the aim. The task at hand for us, the player. The only things standing in our way are the infected. Not other survivors, not the military, no big bad bosses, no other enemy except the many forms of the infected. Fighting the infected and getting to safety are the game's objectives, and ensuring you aren't left for dead. Now, the gameplay itself, in its description, would sound very repetitive. You know, kill zombies, get to safe house, kill zombies, get to safe house, kill zombies, escape, and at its core, that's the game. But it doesn't feel that way in the moment. It's tense. You can hear the different infected from a distance. The soundtrack will ramp up when near a bigger threat. Listening out for other members of your group. Are they low on health? Do they need a health pack? Are they being attacked by a special infected? All while focusing on keeping yourself safe. Except when you play with AI bots, then they won't leave you alone.
Here you go. You can have this. Here.
Take
You
this.
can have it. Here. Take this.
I got something for you.
Here, you can have this.
Hold up, I got something.
Take this.
You're gonna eat.
Wait up. I have something for you. Here, you can have this.
Take this.
Here. You can have this.
Take this for you. Yeah, I got something for you.
Not a time to be a hero. Just take it.
Another way the game avoids mass repetition is the short campaigns and the change of scenario happening often. Even though each campaign is set in either a city, farmland, forest, or whatever it may be, it shouldn't take you more than an hour to complete that campaign and move on to the next. But even with the shorter campaigns set in one location, you do manage to see a lot of variety in surrounding areas like a hospital or metro system. Again, adding to the feeling of discovering something new and different, even though it may only be for a short time. Something though I don't usually talk about in these retrospectives, but is vital to the Left 4 Dead experience, is the game's sound design. As I mentioned before, each special infected has its own sound unique to the creature, and you need to pay attention to these sounds to ensure you don't get ambushed. You can hear the horde groaning, the distinct gurgles of the boomer, the coughs of the smoker, the screams of the hunter, the music cue for a tank incoming, or the infamous crying of a witch. These sounds work because of the soundtrack being used sparingly, only really used in the beginning of a campaign or when a threat is near, creating an atmosphere where sound is your greatest ally in survival. The sound design for the weapons also adds to the satisfaction of blowing away the horde. The shotgun has that punch, the machine guns sound fast, the pistols sound like they are truly your last resort, and the pipe bombs ring through the environment to attract the horde. The weapons sounding powerful is important because when we see the impact the weapons have on infected, it has to make sense, and it does. Only having a primary weapon, pistols, and either a pipe bomb or Molotov adds a strategy component to the experience and ensures you don't panic or waste your resources too soon. because you'll need to have prime resources when facing a horde, or have the right weapon for the job against a smoker or hunter to take them out before they grab a hold of you. The highlight moments of stress testing, however, are the tank and witch fights. Tanks will bash you till you go down and are terrifying once they get too close. The witch is an infected type, however, you can completely avoid, as long as you keep your light out and your partners don't piss her off instead. But if you do accidentally piss one off, she will one-hit KO you, and it is truly nerve-wracking trying to take a witch out before she gets to you. If I had to nitpick, it is odd that the special infected all look alike, like every person wearing the blue hoodie automatically turned into a hunter. Just weird things I like to think about. But seriously, there isn't much not to enjoy, even 12 years after the initial release of the game. Fighting off the horde with your buddies is a stressful good time, and whilst it didn't succeed on the story front, what the game did well was create a game about killing zombies and having fun doing it with your friends. And just 1 year later, we would get a sequel. Left 4 Dead 2 released exactly 1 year after the original game. Again, critically and sales-wise, the game absolutely killed it, with many saying it is the ultimate Left 4 Dead experience. Unfortunately, I live in Australia, so when I initially played through the game in 2009, it was censored, because that's what we love to do apparently. Doesn't happen as much anymore, but was a true plague in the late 2000s. The zombie hordes would instantly disappear. The guns and weapons didn't feel right. It just wasn't as much fun, and I didn't play a ton of it like I did with the original game. Luckily now though, we have access to the uncensored version, and now I get to say that Left 4 Dead 2 is the complete Left 4 Dead experience. At the game's core, Left 4 Dead 2 is more of the same. Fight the horde and get to safety, rinse and repeat. But Left 4 Dead 2's changes are all improvements to the overall experience to make the core gameplay loop feel fresh. The biggest inclusion this time round is the game's addition of melee weapons, and what a great inclusion they are. There are a ton of cosmetic variety in the weapons, but they mostly feel the same to use, with the exception of the fry pan, which kinda sucks, or at least it feels like it sucks. But the melee weapons are a great tool to take on the horde, and does help you feel the extremity of the situation, with hundreds of infected rushing towards you. They are a one-shot kill on the standard infected and don't break, so it is sort of a no-brainer between melee weapons and pistols in most situations. The melee weapon with a limit to it though is the chainsaw, and other than the fact it makes this noise, making you put it away pretty often, feels like you just melt most infected. The melee weapons are a lot of fun, but are not so useful against the special infected, and that's where more weapon variety comes into play. Multiple shotguns, multiple ARs, multiple sniper rifles, multiple SMGs, the addition of a grenade launcher, boomer vomit added as a grenade type, and adrenaline to increase movement speed all come into play to add both replayability and learning what tool is best for the job, because we have so much more special infected to take care of here. We see the return of the hunter, boomer, smoker, witch and tank, in addition to the spitter, charger and jockey, my mortal enemy. Like the original game, these new infected types have distinct sounds to alert you of their presence, like the charger's deep scream, the jockey's laugh and the spitter's, well, spitting noise. We also see new standard infected variations in each of the campaigns, like the clowns, mudmen, hazmat and armored infected. They are not a great deal stronger than the standard infected, but visually add variety to the horde. The special infected this time round are plentiful, like they're everywhere, and because of this, Left 4 Dead 2 is quite a bit more challenging than its predecessor. Worrying about boomer vomit, a smoker entangling you, a hunter pouncing on you, a spitter limiting your movement, a jockey being an absolute pain, a charger taking you across the map, startling a witch, or avoiding a tank all at once is tense, terrifying, and stressful, all in the best possible way that without the new weapons and meds would be a nightmare. But it is just the right amount of chaos that no playthrough of a campaign will be all that similar. The change to witches makes them so much harder to avoid. I mean, sometimes they will legit be in the door of a safe room, which doesn't seem all that fair, but it makes the witches a true threat, rather than being a big threat that is easily avoided. Now I'm going to say something that may not be popular opinion, but Ellis, Coach, Nick, and Rochelle are better than the original cast in my opinion. They just have so much more personality, more one-liners, more of a look into the people they are, and just a fun cast of characters to be with and face the infected alongside. The campaigns themselves are also much better in terms of being different from the next, with cities, a carnival, a swamp, small town, farms, and forests that also change in weather conditions from campaign to campaign. And not only that, but all of the Left 4 Dead 1 campaigns are back here in the sequel, with the new enemy types and weapons, and all of this wrapped up make for the ultimate Left 4 Dead experience. Unlike the original game, I did manage to find one versus lobby here, but it was heavily modded. This was a lot of fun though, and was actually cool to play as the infected for so long. If you couldn't tell, yes, Left 4 Dead 2 is still 100% playable in 2020. You may have noticed I didn't mention the co-op. That's because I have no buddies and the online for legit campaigns is done, so that's why I didn't go into that aspect of what made Left 4 Dead so beloved back in the day. But the real achievement for the Left 4 Dead series is its impact on the zombie genre, even without its continued presence. So what happened to Left 4 Dead 3? The standard Turtle Rock Studios set after Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 was high. Many looked to capture the same magic and clearly were inspired by the series, or saw how much people enjoyed killing infected with friends. The characters of this franchise had become so iconic that they would end up making their way to other games, further proving the impact the series had. The amount of zombie games releasing after 2009 was astonishing. Some great, others not so much, but few have successfully carried the torch from the series, and the first series that comes to mind is the Killing Floor. Killing Floor took more of a wave mode approach rather than a co-op story mode, but the replayability, the variety in Zeds, the map variety, and the pure fun and stress of the series does make it a worthy successor to Left 4 Dead in the first person space. But last year saw the release of World War Z, a third person Left 4 Dead in many ways, a focus on replayability, hordes of zombies and zombie variety with a cast of characters and a focus on co-op and attempt at a story. But also taking what the Killing Floor series had been doing to help repetitiveness with leveling up classes. World War Z isn't as in your face because of its third person perspective, and the zombies can lack the same variety, but it does add something to the Left 4 Dead formula that if a third Left 4 Dead would release and didn't have it, I'd be shocked. Unfortunately, Turtle Rock Studios moved on to make Evolve, a game I've never actually played, but I've not heard great things. And the license of Left 4 Dead belongs to Valve. And honestly, every other month it is seemingly leaked that Left 4 Dead 3 is being worked on. It may be, but I need an official statement from Valve to believe it. What I find more interesting is Turtle Rock Studios' spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead that they have revealed they are working on, called Back 4 Blood. But again, no actual information or gameplay as of yet. It just is out there that it is in the works and promises more Left 4 Dead like action, so I'm on board. I think that is the basic feeling amongst the fans. Whilst many have tried and some succeeded in giving us a multiplayer zombie game, none have quite captured the same feeling of atmosphere and tension that Left 4 Dead captured, and I think it's time we saw what Turtle Rock or Valve has to say in response to the competition that the series inspired to create. The Left 4 Dead series took a different approach to the zombie genre. Each campaign felt like a short film. The characters felt like a ragtag group brought together just from being survivors of the infection. The infected are unique in sound, look, and threat level. The soundtrack is bleak and adds to the world's atmosphere, and whilst the experience isn't as good solo as with your buddies, just to play through this series again made me realize how special it was and how much others in the genre borrowed bits and pieces from it. Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 are 100% still playable in 2020, and I do hope that someday soon we can either see a third game in the series from Valve, or that Back 4 Blood is a return to form for Turtle Rock Studios. The zombie genre has evolved since 2008 and 9, yet the Left 4 Dead series still feels fresh to play today.